now a 2.
Oh,
It's now a 2, yep.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us here at the First Alert Desk at Western Mass News. I'm Wesley Days alongside First Alert meteorologist John Mayer. We have a lot to talk about today in terms of weather.
We do. We had a landfalling hurricane along the Gulf Coast of Florida this morning, and the storm continues to weaken, which is good news as it makes its way on off to the north and northeast, but certainly seeing some heavy damage reported along the Big Bend area of Florida this morning, especially in the Cedar Key area where we're looking at storm surge that's running about 6 feet right now, and also the Perry, Florida area where we had winds gusting over 85 miles per hour. So you look at the satellite and radar, and what we can actually see is the storm's moving at a pretty good clip. We're actually seeing the eye wall entering into portions of southern Georgia. Those red areas on the map, those red boxes, those are actually flood warnings that have been issued for portions of northern Florida and into southern Georgia, as we are dealing, of course, with some heavy rain with what is now Category 2 Idalia. Made landfall as a Category 3 this morning, right along the Big Bend area of Florida.
Wow.
Yep.
Then let's talk about it. I mean, it's from what, some of the statistics that they're talking about at this hour. 10 to 15 feet of storm surge going on right now. We're talking about triple-digit winds as well. So what would you recommend, even though many of our viewers are not really concerned with this or not in the line of impact because of this hurricane, but what would you say just on a general sense about
obviously people who did evacuate, the big thing now is what you tend to see with these storms is a lot of people want to try and head back. They want to go back in and assess the damage when something like this has moved through. Obviously, there's still some heavy rainfall associated with this storm. We've seen storm surge. So far, the highest storm surge figures I've seen have been over 6 feet. So the good news is we may not have seen that 10 to 15 feet of storm surge in parts of Florida, but I have seen reports of over 6 feet of storm surge. I've seen some videos out of Perry, Florida, where they had wind gusts over hurricane force of a lot of trees down, things of that nature. Power outages are starting to add up in the state of Florida, especially near the Big Bend area. So obviously, if you have family or friends that are in that part of the Florida and they did evacuate, take some time. Don't be in a rush to obviously head back. Obviously, you want to see what damage has been done, but just give it a little bit of time before you begin to make your way back into the state of Florida. So
yeah, and definitely, we were talking about airports earlier today on our morning show about how Bradley International is already canceling arrivals and departures from their airport going to Florida.
Right. Tampa Airport actually shut down at midnight on Tuesday. So Tampa has not had any flights going in and out. Orlando International, obviously they've been dealing with some heavy rainfall from some of the feeder bands and some strong winds, but they remain open. Obviously anybody who's supposed to fly out today, probably into tomorrow, obviously want to check with your carrier before you head down to the airport, because I'm sure we're going to see those cancellations continue over the next couple of days.
Wow. So as we're taking a deeper look at the eye of this thing. So it's moving right now. So talk about the timing of this as well, because a lot of people are wondering, well, it's made landfall at 8 or around 7:45 this morning. How long is it going to stay in that area?
It's already moved out of the areas where we saw the landfall. We saw landfall near the Keaton Beach area around 7:45. It came ashore as a Category 3 with winds of 125 miles per hour. The storm is moving at a pretty good clip. A lot of people talk about when Ian hit the Gulf coast of Florida last year. Ian was moving at a much slower clip. Ian was only moving at around 7-8 miles per hour. This is moving at about 18 miles per hour. So it is moving quickly, which is good news. It is weakening, but we're still talking about a Category 2 hurricane that is entering into portions of southern Georgia. So I think this remains a hurricane as it makes its way through Florida and perhaps even into portions of South Carolina. And you can see just to the south of Valdosta, you could see a lot of red and deeper reds on the radar. That is the eye wall of the storm. So we're probably seeing some of those conditions beginning to worsen as towards the Valdosta area. In fact, you can look at the wind gusts. Valdosta right now, wind gusts to 67 miles per hour. Perry, Florida, which is just to the southeast of Tallahassee, still seeing wind gusts over tropical storm force at 54 miles per hour. They had a peak wind gust of 85 miles per hour. But even you look further south into areas like Sarasota, Venice, Florida, they're still seeing wind gusts over tropical storm force. And remember, the eye wall is coming into the Valdosta area, so they're well removed from the center of circulation, but they're still seeing some strong wind gusts. So this is why I say, you know, it is going to take some time before things really begin to quiet down. All that water that has rushed in, all that storm surge needs to begin to recede. And that's when we'll probably get a better idea of some of the damage that occurred in the Cedar Key area. As I mentioned, the Perry area has been hit pretty hard as well. This is what it looked like as Idalia came ashore this morning. Remember, earlier this morning it was a Category 4.
Right.
It was a Category 4. It had winds up to 130 miles per hour. But you notice as the storm begins to approach the coast, the eye kind of collapses on itself. The storm actually went through what's called an eye wall replacement cycle just before it made landfall, and that's what caused the storm to weaken slightly as it made its way on shore. But still, 125 miles per hour, 130 miles per hour really doesn't make a difference. You're still going to be talking about tremendous damage in the areas that experience that eye wall coming on shore.
Yeah, and I was just about to ask you, talk about damage, and it's still going to take some time to wait for that water to recede and go back in. So what kind of, do you think that there will be extensive damage? You know, I know a lot of times hurricanes can bring a lot of damage into the area and sweep really quickly, but what about this, something that's kind of moving maybe a little bit faster at this point
I mean, obviously it is a good thing that the storm is moving faster, but you can still notice you still have some of the tail end of the hurricane coming on shore. Flow around a hurricane is counterclockwise, so that water now is still being pushed in towards some of these areas with that counterclockwise flow around the storm system. So I think as the water begins to recede, we'll get a better idea of what type of damage has been done in the Big Bend area. But I know I've been watching some storm chasers who are in that area, and there has been a good amount of storm surge, especially near the Cedar Key area this morning.
And so, a little behind the scenes talk here for a moment, folks. Thankfully, we had meteorologist Liam Murphy on hand this morning to help me when I was writing what we were talking about this morning when it comes to Hurricane Idalia. But talk to me about storm surge. So it's not flooding, but it's a sense of flooding from the ocean, but it's going to recede.
Well, it is flooding, but it's not flooding from the rainfall. It's the water that's being pushed on shore as the storm begins to make landfall. Again, with this system, with any tropical system, you have counterclockwise flow as the storm approaches. So as that center of circulation comes on shore, anything basically to the south of the eye wall, that's where you see some of the worst storm surge, because that water is just being pushed on shore and it has nowhere to go, so it just inundates the area. And when you're talking about a low-lying area such as Cedar Key, for example, I mean, you talk about 6, 8, 10 feet of storm surge, it's going to do a lot of damage. So, and it's still a hurricane, you know. It's down to 105 miles per hour. Next full advisory will actually come out on about 50 minutes at 11 o'clock, but still a Category 2 storm, sustained winds of 105 miles per hour. As I mentioned, moving at a good clip, northeasterly at 18, but as it enters into the state of Georgia, still forecast to be a Category 2 storm this afternoon, and then it will make its way into South Carolina, and you're still looking at a strong tropical storm, even a minimal hurricane, as it makes its way along the South Carolina coast, and then it's forecast to go out over the Atlantic and continue to weaken. The question then becomes, what does it do as we head on into the weekend? Now, for us here, we're going to have a big ridge of high pressure building over the region, going to set us up for a nice weekend weather-wise, and that's also going to keep Idalia suppressed to our south. So as we head on into the beginning of next week, we'll be watching to see if it heads further out to sea or maybe starts to recurve back towards the eastern seaboard. But that's still several days out. Obviously, in the short term, you know, we want to see what's going to continue to happen as the storm makes its way through Georgia and into South Carolina.
Wow. So that's good to know. Be mindful of South Carolina and Georgia at this point.
Yeah, because you're still going to be looking at probably a low-end hurricane or a strong tropical storm.
Wow. Okay, so there's a lot going on right now.
There is.
And our thoughts are with everyone who's in the line of impact right now when it comes to these hurricanes as well. And we'll keep you updated as well. We have a broadcast coming up in just a little under 2 hours on ABC 40. Western Mass News at noon starts then. And you can catch it wherever you get your news as well. If you want to be mindful of the weather, maybe so much closer to home, we have an app for that as well. It's called our First Alert Weather app, and it keeps you in the know as you get ready to head out the door, and as you are on the go, and that's something to also be mindful of. So if we can, just for a couple of seconds,
Sure.
What are we expecting for today in our area? It was a little wet this morning.
It was a little wet this morning. We had some showers and downpours come through. We are starting to see improvement. The steady rain is going to start to move on out.
Okay.
We'll get some sunshine in here later on this afternoon, and then sneak preview. Upcoming Labor Day weekend, looking really nice.
Really?
Looking really, really nice. I'll talk more about that, though,
Talk
coming up
more
at
about
noon.
that at noon. So you got to stick around. Don's forecast is coming around at noon, so don't forget it. But thank you guys so much for joining us for this special update. We will keep you updated. You can follow along with more updates on our app and on our website, westernmassnews.com. And we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.